that we offer through 2AC3. And I'm going to give you kind of the overview. If you'd like a more in-depth presentation, I'll be doing some of those kind of live webinar opportunities in the future, and certainly happy to visit with you about customizing these for your own organization and elsewise. So a couple of elements that go into this, this main thing that we're going to show you here in terms of the Excel spreadsheet that ultimately will generate a dashboard that can be shared with your leadership, board of directors, and elsewise. We'll start by looking down here at the tabs. We're going to have this data. This is set up for 2018. I've put in some dummy data here in order to be able to demonstrate this. We're going to have the dashboards down here, which I'll get to in a bit. We'll also, if you want to go back a couple of different years, you can put in additional data. In this case, I've just went back and did 2017. And then we're going to have some yearly department reports and some yearly department charts that we'll ultimately go over. But I wanted to start here. This is kind of the main portion which ultimately generates those dashboards that look so nice and are so easy to share to board of director members and otherwise. So two components that go into this. We've got essentially elements that relate to membership right here, and then we've got some financial aspects here, as well as down here that we'll cover coming up. So to start with, let's start here. You've got anything that has an asterisk in the column means that you have to enter that data. If it does not contain an asterisk, such as here in the all members area, then that is automatically generated. You'll see the same thing over here on the profit side, and then down below, these items will be automatically generated as well. Here, your realtor members, you can enter those in here. And again, this is a fairly basic template meant for everyone to utilize. You can take portions of this and not use it if it's not as important, or if it is something you want to utilize, obviously, all of it, then go for it. But realtor members here, we're going to track our new realtor members, the number of resigned members, secondary members, and affiliate members. All of these collectively are going to add up to give us our number of all members overall. So you can enter that in for each month here. What you're going to see then down below are some totals. We'll total up for the year the number of new members as well as those who are resigned. We're not going to worry about these other numbers because they're obviously ongoing totals. We do generate some averages. This number down here is going to generate an average for you. Obviously here an average of new realtor members. We'll utilize that later. I'll demonstrate that more. Average of how many you're losing per month here. Same overall average for your secondary and affiliate members, and then your overall number. What you'll see down below are a few items here that are going to need specific items to be updated on a monthly basis in terms of a formula. Honestly, these projection numbers I don't really utilize until about 3/4 of the way through the year because there's not enough data in order to be able to demonstrate or to feel good about those projected numbers. So I'll circle back around to these here in just a moment, especially this one right here. But what you'll see up here too are a couple of other things, or one thing in particular in a couple of different areas where we generate this from. Your membership retention rate. This is the overall membership retention. Essentially, you're going to want to look at those months of the year that have the highest and then your lowest, and then that's going to use a formula to generate this member retention rate. Where this becomes handy is in particular when you start going into your budgeting cycle. When you utilize this in coupling with this projected number down here, you can start to actually project out using some basic data to say, hey, here's where we feel like we should be for the upcoming year based on previous year's member retention rates and then our projected number. As I mentioned, this projected number I don't utilize throughout the year. Usually when I get around budgeting time, maybe that's halfway through the year to 3/4 of the way through the year. What this is going to do is it's going to take the average number of members that we're adding per month, and we're going to add those to the current membership data based on the number of months that we have left. So we can look at this formula here. In this case, this is if we started utilizing it with in the 4th quarter, you would see that you would utilize this number up here. You're going to add it to then this number, the average, that is times 3, which would be 3 months remaining. So that does need to be generated. But you can use that then to say, oh, we project that we're going to have 1067 by the end of the year. We're going to be, somewhat lenient next year and say, we don't think we'll see a 97% retention rate, but we'll see a 95% retention rate. So then we can go out and times 1067 by this retention rate that we believe we'll have to give us a projected number to budget off of for the upcoming year. So nice little tool there. In terms of the membership, that's pretty much the majority of that, and we'll show you the charts and graphs here coming up in a minute. Second portion of this data entry is the income piece. Again, your income, your expenses, your profit, and your reserves. All of these will need to be entered except for profit, which is automatically generated based on income and expense. Because in many instances for associations, you have dues billing at a certain time and you see a large influx of revenue initially, and then it declines as the year goes along. We've set up a couple of different formulas down below here to calculate. So in terms of, again, see these lighter blue boxes, those are going to be the ones that you need to actually enter in a formula and update a formula on an ongoing basis to net the number that you're going to want for your tracking. So here we're just we took the end of the year and we divided it by 12. So each month, so if it was the first month, it would be this number in this box here, and then divided by 1, and so on and so forth, because ultimately we want to see what kind of revenue we're seeing on a monthly basis. Same thing with the expenses. We don't want to necessarily look at our overall expenses when we're looking here in terms of an average, but rather our average per month, which is then going to help us to create some projected numbers, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a moment in terms of using some projections. And this may or may not be something you're comfortable with, using some projections in terms of your overall income as well as then your profit or loss. In this case, what we would do is take the, for me being conservative on this, take the 3 lowest months average. So, you know, if you have 3 months in here where you see a huge drop off, you don't see the new membership, you're not maybe doing as many events or things that are generating revenue for you, just to be on the conservative side, take those 3 months of revenue, and there's actually a little formula down here at the bottom where you can plug this in. Well, I did take 4 months on this one as an example, but it takes that times the number of months remaining, and then that gives you a projected income based on what your current income was in addition to that projected income. Then what we've got here is a projected amount based on, you know, your average monthly costs and 12 months worth of numbers in this case, which gives us then this projection. Again, I won't utilize these until 3/4 of the way through the year. And if you have folks that maybe take this a little too literally, you may not want to use these numbers. But again, nice little tool to start to, as you're making your way through the year, look to see what we think we might end up the year with in terms of a profit and a loss. So here are a couple of other things that are generated then automatically from these numbers that come in up here. What we're going to look at are average month expenses and month's reserves. Of course, the year-to-date reserves are going to be based off of your reserves here divided by the number of months that you're in and the average expenditures. These are going to populate automatically, so you don't even have to worry about it. So it's going to show you what you spent each month, the kind of the average number of expenditures for that duration or that point in your year. And then it's going to contrast that with the number of months reserves that you're holding at that point in the year as well. One other item that gets automatically generated is revenue per member. This is essentially income, overall income, divided by the number of realtor members. You could do it for the overall members should you choose. For me, I just go off the realtor members. So that's just going to take your overall income and divide it by the number of realtor members. But we also then have the ability to look in and see what we're making beyond our dues. So this subtracts out the local dues. So you will have to establish these formulas down here based on whatever your local dues are. I just plugged in the number 200 here to make it easy. And so as you can see here, each of these is going to be $200 less, but that tells us how much revenue we're bringing in per member on a non-dues revenue resource. So down here, you have some additional items, some kind of descriptives, non-quantitative items, anything that you want to kind of put in here in terms of notes or items for yourself, and or if you're sharing this with your leadership, staff, or otherwise, you can put those in here. So once we've done that, we can come in here, and those are all going to auto-populate these dashboards based on those numbers. So what you're going to have is year over, in this case, I plugged in some 2017 numbers. It's really great once you utilize this 2-3 years down the road, or if you have back data, you can start to do comparables and see trend lines in terms of your overall membership. We've got the number of realtor members here. We can start to look at new members. Again, very helpful if you are seeing an influx of new realtor members to be able to answer that question specifically of how many members are we getting per month and do some contrasting with previous years. And then over here, you can look at your average and your overall numbers. So when you're being asked that question inevitably that you get of how many new members do we have joining, you're able to give them specific data. And moreover, as a board of directors, if you're seeing an influx or a falling off in new realtor members, you can orient your educational offerings or other specific offerings based on this data. Administrative dashboard continues here. We can track affiliate members that may or may not be important to you, but it's in there. And any of these, by the way, you can take in or leave in, take out, whatever works best for you. In terms of generating the data that works best for you. And then come down here and we start to get into those income and expenses. We can look at those at year-over-year comparables. We use those reserves and profit numbers to start to look at those. And then we have some additional dashboard related items here that just shows percentages of members by the type of membership. And then we look at our overall fiscal performance. This can be altered. Any of these really can be altered. You can select the data that's being utilized in the chart. You can show the full annual, you can show quarterly, whatever it is that you think it makes it easiest for you to understand and present. Then we do some overall averages in terms of our membership averages and our fiscal averages. We have some numbers down here again so we can look at comparables year over year. And then finally some average expenses versus the month's reserves. That was that lower section of the Excel chart, which will generate this. And then again, our revenue per member chart that we created based on our amount of income versus realtor members, and of course we subtracted out our local dues. So with that, that's a quick overview of the ongoing. At the end of year, this will also spit out some different information where you can compare and contrast. If you're doing and tracking, I'll show you some of my other reports, the advocacy, networking, education reports as they're labeled. But you can look for the number of interactions in each of those departments, and that will ultimately generate some charts that let you just see and share with your membership in terms of how many interactions are we having overall with our membership, and in which department are we seeing the greatest amount of membership, and then you can actually look and see what does it look like in each of the departments year over year. So if you want more information on those will also be available on the YouTube channel or at twac3.com/reports. And of course, if you want to get a hold of me, I'd be more than happy to visit with you about all of this information, these data charts and the dashboards, and if you like, we can actually customize those to your association as well. So with that, I think we're going to call it quits here.